Some years ago, on one of my socials, I posted that there are people I know. I actually said some of my friends who the last time they read a book was when they were doing their matric. That beyond that, they've not read any book. They've not read the book for leisure. Some of them have not even written anything beyond that, apart from just signing a document here and there. And that their handwriting has disappeared. They no longer have handwriting. So whenever they try to write, their hands tremble, and then their writing really doesn't reflect any ability to say something that to join a sentence and it makes sense. So I said that it's wrong. I said it's wrong. I said we should not have gone to school to read so that we can pass. We should have gone to school to read so we can know. So accumulation of knowledge through reading needs to be a continuous thing. So I said, I've got friends who have never read anything since the last time they were in school, or they've never read anything for leisure. I said it on my socials, and a friend who is not a Facebook friend, because there are Facebook friends and a friend took the status and shared it on his. And on his, it attracted a whole lot of comments. People came out and saying, yeah, it's so useless. Wow, what's the point of reading? These days, there's more information in podcasts I don't ever get in a book. We don't read. Why read? If you read, you end up not combing your hair. You end up being mad. You end up being, mad. You end up being mad. Books make people mad. And I quite remember when I was young, when I was growing up, that was one of the things that was being said. Every time you saw somebody who had a mental disease, mental illness, they will say, this one was good in school, he read a lot. He read a lot of newspapers. And as a result of reading so much newspapers, he ended up being mad. So in a way, it became a point of alienation from books, whereby people didn't want to read so much, because if you read too much, you end up being mad. Because you'll find that some of these people with mental illness, they spoke very strong English with big words, hyperbole, or some will use verbose language. And at the end of the day, it looked like, the poison was in the book. So it went on to a time whereby people just got alienated. Apartheid was such a smart policy because it made you take ownership of something. You feel as if it's yours, even when it's something that has been told to you. And it actually was there, I guess, the saying that if you want to hide something from a black person, you must write it in a book, especially in their own language. But the main important thing is you must write it in a book. So when I put a status and said people have not been reading, I was basing it on that to say there is this disconnect for most black people with books. In South Africa, white people constitute 6% of the population, but the biggest, the best sellers, books that sell the best are in Afrikaans. And Afrikaans is not 6% of the population. It's actually a fraction of the 6%, maybe 3% or 4%, because they also have got English people, they've got Germans, they've got French. But Afrikaans literature sells the best than any other language. Sells higher than isiZulu. Sells higher than any other. And isiZulu, we're speaking about 11 to 12 million people who speak isiZulu in South Africa. But to write a book in isiZulu, you're not going to sell 10,000 books. But Africans, they sell a lot. So Afrikaans writers can become professional writers, but black people cannot. But that's not the issue of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the issue of reading. So when this guy posted my status on his shared it, and people come out, and I was so astounded because there was so much support for that point of view to say, oh no, what's the point? Watch TV these days. Oh, wow, we listen to radio. Hey, watching podcasts, and what's the point of books? It hurt me. It hurt me because it's a state of mind. It's like where some people are. Some people are really convinced that they will ever know, and they will know something new, that they will be smart, that they can become smart by watching a podcast, 45 minutes, 1 hour. People in the studio trying to sell advertising, because most of the podcasts are done to sell advertising. That's why people will actually say ridiculous things, end up insulting other people, because it's about eyeballs on the screen. If you're watching, they know that they can sell you to your corporate. So you think when someone has attracted you to sell you, they're actually going to tell you something that's going to build you. You think corporate will put so much money into something that builds you. Like if somebody started a podcast and said, no, my point of conversation is Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Ibrahim Traore, Abdel Nasser, Ameseseri. You think actually someone is going to Muammar Gaddafi? Corporate will say, no, we're going to put money into that one. Yeah, that one is talking about the Jahamaria revolution in Libya, whereby people must become self-sustaining, whereby people must not depend on the West, where people must do things by themselves. You're actually convinced that a corporate, the bank, an insurance is going to say, oh, that's a good side. It's telling people how to farm, how to produce their own food. Let's go put money there. They're not. The proliferation of these platforms, lots and lots of them, is tied closely with running away from what they call legacy media, for example, what used to be the platform for lies, but it's also tied closely with keeping the black man dull. It's tied closely with hiding things from a black man by writing them in a book. Because let me be honest with you, you are most unlikely to come into contact with a new word on a podcast. Even if somebody said, Quo vadis, prima facie, you are not going to run to a dictionary and say, let me find out why they said, because you'll believe by listening, and a minute or 2 minutes later, you're going to get the context. But if you're reading a book and you find a word that sounds Latin or something else, and you really enjoy the book, but you want to understand what the story is about, you will do all in your power to make sure you understand the word. You might go to Webster's, you might go to Oxford, you might even just try to understand how is it used, because these days when you go to search engines, they give you the option of how the word is used, then you can go there, find about it. Or even further on, you can go into all these chat platforms and AI chat platforms and find out how to use it in a sentence they're going to tell you. But I doubt you're going to do it if you're watching a podcast. And here's one thing people are getting wrong. Oh, I'm not going to read a book. Oh, watch podcasts these days. Oh, we don't know. We listen to radio these days. Every single thing you're watching on TV was written. Somebody wrote it. Somebody edited it. And when you say editing, sometimes you don't mean really fixing the grammar and syntax and diction. No, we're talking about censoring, removing that which they believe you should not hear. And here you are sitting here, I watch a podcast. And if 100,000 people watch the same podcast, you've got 100,000 people who think the same things. If in a podcast they say, P. Diddy is not guilty. They say that P. Diddy is not guilty. You've got 100,000 people who are there saying, no, P. Diddy is not guilty. And they're giving the same reason that was given in the podcast, they're giving it. Yeah, because blah, 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 blah. Because it's a black person they're trying to frame it. Oh, it's like O.J. Simpson. Oh, it's like this and that. Because it's 100,000, it's a head mentality. You're not getting an independent thought. You're not applying your mind because it's a head mentality. You listen to radio, same thing. That is why my generation and the generation before read a lot. We read so much. 1976 happened because those children read. Hector Peterson, Tsitsi Mashinini, Khotso Siatlholo, those people read. They read so much. That's why apartheid government used to ban books, because they knew that those books were going to be read. They ban a book because they know this book is going to be read. Governments now no longer ban books. They don't care. They know you can have a book on the shelf, it's not going to be read. What they do is that they're going to shut the platforms. They're going to deplatform you, because what you're saying is opening people's eyes. You'll hear suddenly, I cannot get 404. This site is not available because somebody's opened another person's eyes. So that is why it's important for black people. I know I'm sounding like I'm talking rubbish. I know I'm sounding like I'm talking rubbish. Like I'm barking at a tree. But it's important for people. I say black specifically because I know white people read. When you are waiting at the airport, you are waiting in the lounge, the slow lounge or whatever. You see a black person toggling a phone on TikTok. Watching stupid videos. I'll say stupid. I'm not afraid to say it. Watching stupid videos that never ends. You can watch them for 20 years. Watching stupid videos and laughing alone. And you look at this white child here, this 10, 11, 12, even 8-year-old. You see they're reading a book. They are meeting new words. They're traveling the world. Because if a story is set in Salzburg, Austria, or if a story is set in Germany, Berlin, by reading that book and finishing it, I have taught Berlin. I've tasted the food. I've smelled the air. I've met the language. I know how the language sounds. I know I've met the cultures. I know if they greet with their hands or with their feet. And that's how you become culturalized. You become a better person. You become globalized. You become a better person by reading. If I want to go to Australia, I just take a book that's set in Australia, written by whoever, and I read it. And at the end of the day, I know so much about Australia. You'll never get that in a podcast. Never. You'll never get in a podcast. And it's deliberate. And you've got so many. That's why you get the most stupid podcasts are the most sponsored podcasts. So yeah, it's that important thing I wanted to rant about. You know, my YouTube channel is called A South African Perspective. And that's why most of the time you'll just hear me talking about black people. But it's not that I'm just talking to black people, but I'm talking about black people because I'm a black person. I know where we fall short. You see the books in my background. Somebody asked me one time, they walked in and they said, have you read all these books? I said, yes. And they looked at me funny. You read all of them? Yeah, I read all of them. And more, because in front of me there are actually more books than the one that you see in the back there. I read them. And at the end of the day, I'm not saying I'm better than the next person. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying I'm better than the person who watches podcasts and thinks that's where they get information. I'm better than the person who watches TV and thinks they're getting information. They think they get all the information. I'm better than the person who listens to radio and think they're getting all the information because I also watch TV, I also watch podcasts, I also listen to radio, but I also read books. They take me to the world. They give me the smells of other countries. So yeah, let's try, guys. Let's stop this thing of saying books are not for me. Books, if they're not for you, you're losing out. Okay, subscribe to the channel and like I always say, let's make the circle bigger.